Soldiers returned home young, dumb, and full of patriotic spirit.
Oh, yeah.
And especially here in America, this
Full of cum. That's what they were going to say. Nobody wants to have kids anymore. Video by How Money Works. Let's go ahead and check this out, man.
The end of the Second World War resulted in a massive spike in fertility across the world that gave rise to the largest generation in history, the aptly named baby boomers. Soldiers returned home young, dumb, and full of patriotic spirit.
Oh, yeah.
And especially here in America, this
Full of cum. That's what they were going to say.
family-centered growth coincided with what many believed to be the
After killing a bunch of Nazis, ain't nothing like coming home to some sweet, watery walls.
golden age of capitalism. Homes were cheap, the free market was providing newfangled products to consume, jobs could provide a stable and comfortable living, and the only thing left to do was get busy starting a family. Now, this sounds like such a rose-tinted version of history that borders on being inaccurate, but that doesn't actually matter. Today, we are dealing with expensive homes, overconsumption of disposable consumer junk, and jobs that are extremely insecure.
Right.
So naturally, the most pressing question for governments around the world is how to make people make babies again?
Childcare is now more expensive than rent for working families and is costing the economy more than $122 billion a year.
Their childcare expenses from their
Bro, that's the hustle. I need to start a nursery. You feel me?
income taxes. That's a first.
What is the biggest thing that needs to change here in South Korea to make this more appealing for women?
Starting next year, South Korea will pay a childcare allowance of around $530 to parents with newborns.
The biggest issue in 20 years will be population collapse. Not explosion, collapse.
An uncontrolled population decline is a very concerning issue that will have serious impacts on all of us who are planning to live for more than the next 20 years. But it's important to distinguish between people who are concerned about what a population decline represents and people who are concerned about not having a ready stream of available labor produced for them.
Telling you, man, the entire world is going to be brown in like a couple hundred years because those are the only people still fucking, apparently. Brown people. Africa, the Middle East, India, they're just getting that shit going every day. You know, all the whites and the Asians. I don't know what's slowing y'all up, man. Y'all need to get on that blue chew or something.
They may sound similar, but there are two very distinct solutions depending on how you look at the problem or if you even consider it a problem at all. To see why, we need to clear up some history. The exact cause of the 1950s...
Yeah, that's a crazy thing, too, about this whole white replacement theory. Bro, it ain't our fault. Y'all not giving y'all's women, you know what I'm saying? Like, how is that my fault? What do black people, brown people got to do with white dudes not boning their women? That's... I mean, interracial relationships still make up, I think, less than 5% of all relationships. So if there are groups of people, South Koreans, white people, whatever, that your populations are diminishing, that's because y'all don't want to get it popping. That ain't got shit to do with me.
Baby boom was not as simple as people just returning home from war and getting to it. The easiest way to see this is that there was no baby boom after the First World War. In fact, after 1918 and a brief dip during the Spanish flu, birth rates dropped to levels very similar to today, which kind of goes against the narrative. If you paid any attention to general media coverage of population collapse, you have probably been told that this is an entirely modern phenomenon caused by, well, whatever problem with the modern world you want to pick.
Sure.
But that's not entirely accurate. In fact, the fertility rate back here was actually worse than it looks. To understand why, you need to understand two numbers. The fertility rate, normally expressed in the number of births per woman, and also the replacement rate. The replacement rate is how many children the average woman needs to have to maintain the population.
Right,
Today in America and most other high-income countries, that number is about 2.1 children per woman. The 2 is because the population is naturally split 50-50 between men and women. So to account for that, the average woman needs to have 2 children. And the 0.1 is because tragically, some children don't make it to adulthood where they could potentially have children of their own. Now, everybody from politicians across the political spectrum to your weird uncle at Thanksgiving has been paying strangely close attention to national and global fertility rates.
Sure.
But what gets less attention is that the replacement rate is variable too. and it has also been declining. Back in the 1920s, people needed to have more than 3 children on average just to maintain the population, since infant mortality rate was much higher than it is today.
Right.
That means that the population back here was actually declining faster than it is today. All in the age before modern contraceptives, widespread women in the workforce, the breakdown of family values, or whatever else is blamed for our current population trends.
Look at that.
The other explanation for the baby boom was that the post-World War II
So back when the world was more Christian, there was no birth control, and, you know what I'm saying, immigrants weren't as plentiful, whatever excuse you want to give. When you take a look at the numbers and how shit was panning out, the population was actually declining at a faster rate at that point in time. Things have gotten better.
economy was just so good that starting a family was easy.
Right.
But the Roaring '20s were also a highly prosperous post-war economy, and yet people were having a lot fewer babies. The birth rate actually only started recovering after 1929, when the Great Depression plunged a staggering amount of American families back into relative poverty.
Yup.
In fact, by actually looking at the data, you can see that the baby boom really started in the 1930s, when the American economy was arguably in its worst state in the last century.
Yeah, man, something about that poverty gets you horny or something. I don't know. It's like the more money you make, it's the less kids you want to have, because shit, it's hard to spend this money on fun shit when you got babies to feed and put diapers on. You know what I'm saying? But when you're broke and you can't go to Dubai anyway, might as well stay home and get busy in the bedroom with your lady.
There was a pause during the war, but the post-war baby boom that we are all familiar with was really just the continuation of a trend that had already started. So if it wasn't contraceptives, women in the workforce, economic growth, the move into cities, or modern family values, what actually caused the birth rate slump back then? Well, it's the same thing that caused the baby boom. And the reason I'm giving you this history lesson is because it could also solve a lot of our population problems today, but you might not like the answer.
Okay.
One of the most consistent baby blockers is income inequality. The economist Thomas Piketty, as part of writing his book Capital in the 21st Century, collected and compiled income inequality data over the last century. Just quickly, this is probably one of the best books on economics ever written, and it
really?
reads easily even to non-economists.
I might have to pick that up. I like a good economics book.
Like always, I will leave a link to it in the description below. Using my link helps the channel a little bit, and a good book will provide way more value than I ever could through something like a Patreon. But anyways, if you invert the data that Piketty collected on income inequality, it lines up almost perfectly with the fertility rate. If people
Maybe almost perfectly is a little bit of a stretch. I mean, we do see, you know what I'm saying, that curve, but right here, when this is going up, this is going down. So, and then when this is going down, this is going up. So I don't know if I could say perfectly, broski, but okay, I'm going to let you rock with it. Let's see where you go from here.
If people feel like they aren't falling behind, if they have social mobility, and they can provide what is considered a good life, they will have more children.
Okay.
The New Deal, that was the foundation of the Great Depression recovery efforts, and the GI Bill following World War II, massively reduced income inequality. And with it, the babies flowed. But this is a big problem because, yes, people in power want to avoid a population crunch, but not like that. So it's time to learn how money works to find out how to make people make babies without, you know, giving them too much. This week's video is sponsored by Beam. Beam is all about help. It's crafted with the best part. Powder by Clinical, a lot easier. Hours on Reddit, actually 30 serving. Try it out and 18 out. For most of human history, our population has been pretty much stagnant. Based on archaeological records, the average population growth rate for the 10,000 years between the dawn of human civilization and the Industrial Revolution was just 0.04%. Generation to generation, it was barely enough to register. And even then, there were significant setbacks like the Black Plague, which wiped out between 1/4 and half of all people in Europe.
Wow.
People had a lot more children on average, but fewer of them survived, so the population didn't really budge. And then came the Industrial Revolution, which kicked off a bit of a feedback loop. Mechanized industry and agriculture could feed and provide more people, and more people meant more work could be done, and more innovations could be made to feed and provide for more people. Refinements in medicine and nutrition meant that people also lived a lot longer, which gave them more opportunities to apply their expertise to making an overall wealthier world. By best estimates, something like 7% of all of the humans to have ever lived are currently alive right now.
Wow.
And that's been great for business. Having more people naturally boosted industry, because there were more potential consumers to cater to, and population growth provided a ready supply of labor to work in the new factories. Early industrial centers like London became extremely rich, but even back then, some familiar trends emerged. Cities during the Industrial Revolution were horrible places to live. They figured out building factories much faster than building sanitation. So infectious diseases, malnutrition, and foodborne pathogens were more prevalent in these population-dense centers. So many people died in London that up until the 20th century, it was almost entirely reliant on people moving from the countryside to get work to maintain its population. Now, most cities in high-income countries, with the notable exception of San Francisco, eventually figured out that leaving human waste in the street was not a good idea. So even though cities aren't actively killing their inhabitants anymore, they are still population black holes that have very low birth rates and rely on people moving to them to maintain themselves. That's simply because cities are expensive. Unless you are extremely wealthy, you probably can't afford a family-sized home close to a major city. And depending on your career, you might not be able to move away from those cities without losing your job. Today, a trend has emerged where having lots of children is either an indication of being extremely wealthy or being extremely poor, with very little room in the middle for large middle-class families, because that's just become unaffordable in most cities around the world. Now, over the past 300 years, we have also run out of people to pull from the high birth rate countryside. So the trend—
Yeah, I was thinking that earlier in the video, how those are the people that have the most kids. People who are poor, the more poor you are, the more kids you're probably going to have, or incredibly wealthy, like an Elon Musk, where you can just be shooting out babies left, right, and center, or, you know, you can insert whatever basketball player, rapper here. They also apply.
has gone global, and today most advanced economies pull in people from high birth rate countries. The rise in immigration to fill labor shortages has masked the issue, but it has caused other problems like further contributing to housing affordability and putting downward pressure on wages and upward pressure on income inequality. There is also the not-so-subtle reality that a lot of the people that want a stable supply of young workers would, let's just say, strongly prefer if those workers were homegrown. Now, in all of this, there is one other simple solution. Let people work jobs outside of the city. The COVID pandemic was the most recent global event to shake up birth rates. Initially, it caused a sharp dip as people lost their jobs and saw hospitals barely having the capacity to manage the load. But as more dual-income households moved to working from home, births increased and not only made up for the initial drop, but exceeded expected trends.
Oh yeah.
Unsurprisingly, it's easier to deal with a pregnancy and have children when parents don't need to go into an office. It allows people to live in cheaper and more family-friendly communities.
Yeah, bro, I can't imagine how my wife and I would manage if both of us needed to work and we both needed to work outside of the home. Being stay-at-home parents, I'm working from home. She actually does a little part-time gig now. She's a lawyer. Being able to do that from home, it's huge, man. It's huge.
Communities further away from commercial centers. Now, this reality is rustling some jimmies because companies want people to move back into the office for a variety of reasons. But the good news is that we actually have some power over this. Even with extreme measures, it's very hard to force people to have children. So if businesses won't entertain policies to promote equality or let people work from home, they don't get their future workers and consumers. If you want further evidence of the benefits of moving away from the office, look no further than the CEOs themselves that are demanding that workers return to the office while they don't actually show up to work at all. Go and watch this video on how they are making that work for them because it's something more relevant today than when the video was made last year. And don't forget—
Yeah, man. So that's the situation. Essentially, what I'm hearing is wealth inequality is the major driving factor for the decrease in population, or the growth of the population. And so when guys like Elon Musk, billionaires who are literally making it harder for the middle class to grow and flourish, when they are bitching and crying about the population rate, it's all just fucking theater, dude. But that's the situation. Yeah, personally, not worried about it. All I can say is be the change you want to see in the world. You have kids. You have your family. You extend your bloodline, your lineage. and let the world worry about itself, I suppose. But interesting stuff. Regardless of what happens, you know, you and me, we are going to get it regardless. So it is what it is. But it is interesting to explore and observe. But you let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching. Peace out.